A Child's Journey Across the Sea by Lene Martens of Glenning Valley 2261. Narrated by Janine Penfold. As a small 4-year-old girl who spoke only Danish, it looked terrifying. Men painting other men orange and throwing them into the swimming pool. I had no way of understanding that this was a ritual when crossing the equator, and I feared this would happen to my own father. In November 1956, my parents, my 1-year-old brother and I were sailing to Australia on the MS Scowbron, one of the last ships through the Suez Canal before the blockade. I remember little of the journey, apart from the horrible taste of powdered milk, the equator ritual, and buying souvenirs from men in canoes in Colombo. The items were raised on ropes and money lowered back down if the item was purchased. It was a long 6-week journey, and for reasons unknown to me, we ended up having to disembark in Melbourne and take a very long train trip to Sydney. My parents had decided that life had better prospects in Australia, so this was a brave decision and quite a gamble to come to a place where we knew no one, had nowhere to live, no job, and didn't speak the language. We began life in Australia, living with a Danish couple we had been put in contact with, as my father was an engineer. We lived with them for a couple of weeks in a small house in Asquith, New South Wales. My father then found us accommodation in a kind local's garage, which he converted into some sort of house, despite the fact it appeared to be already home to the local possums who urinated onto our ceilings regularly. My parents left behind a suburban brick home to come to live in a garage in the bush at Asquith. My mother needed to learn to use a primus stove, which must have been a difficult challenge, to say the least, and my father needed to earn an income, so got himself a job helping to build new homes in the western suburbs of Sydney, despite the fact he knew nothing about house building. His solution was to simply turn up on site earlier than everyone else to see how the work was done. I was sent to school as soon as term started in 1957 and quickly fitted in while learning to speak English. I was fully accepted by the other children and teachers and was only aware of my difference when repeatedly asked to spell my name throughout my schooling, and when revealing my lunch sandwiches, which were made with black rye bread. Other than that, life was great. I loved school and did well in my studies, had lots of friends, including a few others who had migrated to Australia from Europe. I was even chosen to play the Virgin Mary in the Christmas play and the Wattle Queen on Wattle Day. Considering I was not yet formally an Australian, this demonstrated the full acceptance by my peers, which I enjoyed as a child. Despite an interesting start to life in Australia, my father's belief that life would be better proved to be correct. He gained work as an engineer. My parents built their own home in Asquith, and eventually the family became 5, and we moved house several times due to the fact that my father had itchy feet and was always on the lookout for an opportunity which might better the family's fortunes. We moved to the Hawkesbury River in partnership with another family and built the marina boat hire there. Then on to the Central Coast to build another 3 homes, while my father worked as an engineer in a large American company and later in his own consulting business. More houses followed, after which time my parents retired to the Blue Mountains. Their 3 children had all been educated, gained employment, married, and had children of their own, always grateful for the decision made by our parents to come to this country. At 93, both of my parents are still alive and relatively well, with one in aged care and the other still independent at home, despite her children's best efforts to get her to a more supported and safer environment. I'm sure my experience is not very different to many others who have made the move to come to live in Australia. It's a rare privilege to grow up in this country which, despite its flaws, offers opportunities and freedoms for those brave enough to venture here and work hard. The end.